Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
Hey.
Hi, buddy.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
It's a big day, Sejan. It's a big day, and I don't even think you understand why it's a big day.
No, not really.
Okay, so if you listen to last week's episode, I told the story about how my computer got broken and my car's dead and I don't have nothing left, right? And at the And at the end of that recording, because God has a sense of humor, the computer that we record on decided that a bunch of the programs we use is not going to let us use those programs anymore.
Some eagle-eyed listeners might even recognize that maybe halfway through what we were recording, it might have decided that.
Yes.
We're not quite sure what happened there.
Yeah, that's why you got a short little episode, right? There's the 127. I think that it can't be the shortest episode we've ever done, right?
It is not the shortest episode. We used to put out under an hour, so we are...
We're evolving. You can't ask Charmander to do under an hour. That's like... Well, you can't ask Charmander. You can't ask Charizard. You know what? I'm losing the thread here. Anywho, this is the first episode of the new era of our new recording machine.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's it. I feel it's got 8 gigabytes of RAM.
Damn.
Which, that feels good. But it's also, it's still a Mac Mini, because we always use the Mac Mini. But now it's apparently the M2 chip. And people are losing their minds over that over at Tech YouTube. But I can't believe that Sejan didn't know, because we were supposed to have a production. This is way, making the video stuff behind the podcast. We had planned to do a production meeting on Wednesday, which was also the day I picked this up, and I'm like, I can set up that, no problem. And our production meeting got delayed 45 minutes because I was wrong.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. I do remember that being late, and I do remember you being on a new device, but I thought I was forgetting, a important, anniversary or something. This is good. Mark the date, 420.
Nope, 423, though. 4/23/23. That's when we got our new heart and brain of the Say Report.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's when we're recording. I mean, this is coming out on Monday. Whatever. Hi, welcome to the Say Report. I'm excited. I'm excited to do this. I'm not excited by new GarageBand. And I'm also, I'm going to use this time as a little bit of a PSA. The reason why the computer wouldn't set up is it wanted to update in, hi, welcome to the Mac Mini. We see that there's an update available. Do you want to do that now? And it wouldn't work. That's what held me up until I had created an account on the computer. So I don't know if it's a problem that they're experiencing right now or a bit of an oversight, but I think the reason why it couldn't download that update is because it didn't know who was downloading it yet.
So, wait a minute. So in order to download the update, you needed to be signed into the device, but you weren't signed into the device?
Yeah, so I would turn it on, and it'd be hello, bienvenue, hola, all those things that it says when you turn on a Mac computer. And then you'd click through, and it would say, we see that there's an update available. Would you like to update before continuing? So I said, yes. Why wouldn't I do that, right? Why wouldn't I want to build the computer on the most up-to-date version of the operating system?
So you were not yet in a position to have signed in, even if you wanted to.
Right. The first thing it said after welcome to your new Mac Mini was, we see there's an update available. So of course I'm going to do that. That's going to be the first thing that I do, so that if I update it after the fact, it doesn't undo everything that I just did. Does that make sense?
I mean, it sounds like it was asking you to update without signing in, but you couldn't sign in without updating.
Right.
So you were stuck in a loop.
So I was stuck in a loop. So then I'm just well, I don't want to update. And then by not updating, it allowed me to actually set up the computer. And then once all that was done, I could do the update manually. So here we are. But it's weird. That seems like a weird oversight to be hey, we noticed there's an update for this machine. Let's get that done first. But it wouldn't do it. And the only thing that I could think that was holding it up was the fact that it wasn't getting the authentication of some Apple account.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense that it would need to authenticate in order to do the update. But oof, boy, yeah, having it ask you before it was giving you the option to sign in is a little bit of a dropped ball there.
Yeah.
But man, like, computers are hard.
Wow, I feel like Byron Allen is here with the beauty of that segue. Why was there a time in your life when computers were hard, Siege?
I mean, yeah, they still are. What are you talking about? Like, yes, computers are. The fact that we can even like start up computers is a fucking miracle, and we just take that for granted. That's all.
It's this wasn't setting up a bit from your stand up. It was such a good Byron Allen moment, Siege.
I'll leave the Type 5 to Charizard, so I'm good. So
you son of a bitch. Look at that. I don't know. I feel like I have a lot to talk about, but also I feel like I have nothing to talk about. I'm getting used to new GarageBand. I think that's it. I'm thrown off. Usually I have the time right in front of me, but I got to look up now for the time. So, have we been talking for what, 6 minutes or 60 hours? I couldn't tell.
And as you know, anybody that doesn't know, Devin straps himself into the chair like fucking
Clockwork Orange style.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna have to change the chair. No, what's up? So what's going on, Siege? I don't know. I forgot how to do the show in the week since we've done a show.
Well, what have you been up to? Have anything major that you've dipped your toe in?
Well, I said I was gonna do Death's Door for this week's episode, and I did it. I finished Death's Door before this week's episode, but I'm also Devin Decker, so I dragged my feet on Ori and the Blind Forest. That's finally done though. Not 100%. Don't know if I ever will 100% it. And the only part that's not 100% is, like, weirdly, map completion.
Yeah, filling out the map is one of the hardest things in that game, yeah.
I haven't felt this, like, annoyed at filling out a map since the Symphony of the Night achievement on Xbox, where, like, literally, if you didn't, like, go to one specific pixel, it wouldn't finish out the room. And It wasn't like the last pixel, like the one that detected it was like the fourth pixel from the edge of the area. Bullshit. Yeah. Just like annoyance. And
that was Symphony of the Night, right?
Yeah, that was Symphony of the Night. For Ori is the fact that like I've collected every health upgrade, I've collected every ability point, I've collected every energy upgrade. All my maps are like 99%, and then I look through, I'm like, I don't see anything that I'm missing, Ori and the Blind Forest. What are you talking about?
It's one of the last vestiges of the shitty map completionist achievement, because like there was a whole bunch of those for a while. The worst one for me was Borderlands. Like, and it's the same problem, right? Is like especially Borderlands 2 is over 3 and Tina, but 2 had this weird thing to it where like, I guess 3 kind of brought this over too, where like you could see the map and you could see things and all of that, but like you were filling it out in a radius around you. So I think 1, it was just kind of like walk into a room, you've discovered it fills up, right? But in 2 they introduced this like radial effect of like you need to walk so close for it to fill out, and there are parts of that map that like it dings for your completion, right? And if you don't fill it out, then like if you don't get close enough, but that means that you have to like walk to the dumbest corners of those maps in order to just see if maybe that fills it out. And like you hit like 99% on a map, and you're like, there's no drive, there's no reason for me to go anywhere else. I don't need money right now. I've got all the health boosts I need. I've got like all of the power ups, all this shit. There's literally no carrot at the end of this stick for me to just go and walk all the way over there just to fill this map out. And that's not fun anymore, right? And Ori's definitely very guilty of that. That one does it too. I feel like there was a little bit of that in Child of Light too, but I might be misremembering. It's been a few years since I've picked that game up.
Yeah, I've never even played that one, so I couldn't. But
it's another collect them all, fill out the map, like type of game like this in Hollow Knight and stuff like that. there is definitely something to be said about like encouraging people to explore your stuff if there's something to find, but like just kind of arbitrarily saying like you need to walk into this room once in order to get this percentage point is like that's great. I
Or you
mean,
need to jump up to this height. Like if there's
right,
something
right,
there.
you're in this room, yeah, you're in this room, but you just need to jump up just 2 feet in order to actually fill out the thing and get the. It's like, okay, what did this do for me narratively?
Yeah.
Nothing. Okay.
And I think it should be, and I feel like games afterwards have done this. If there's something to collect, Shantae and the Seven Sirens, is that the fifth game in that one?
Half Genie Hero or something.
Half Genie Hero is
One
the
of them.
fourth one. The fifth one, I think, is in the Seven Sirens, which would make sense because there's 7 sirens that you got to beat up in the game. I think that's the title of it. That one, it's specifically finding everything. There's no map completion thing,
Yeah.
but everywhere that you need to go on the map ends up having like a health upgrade or like a trading card that you need for some quest.
Yeah, well,
So
on a larger scale, right? It's
Yeah.
just it's achievements for achievement's sake, as opposed to actually doing something to benefit you as the player. Whether it's narrative or it's like ludological, just like no, I just like these mechanics are fun, and so like let's make them. You know, Death's Door does this in a couple of places
Yeah.
with like some good puzzles and stuff that are not necessarily part of the main storyline, but you're rewarded with cool like navigation and puzzles and prizes and stuff like that. And you know, so it's the carrot stick, right? Like there needs to be a reason at the end of all of that for you to have done it though. Like it can't just be just like, wasn't it cool that we made you just like sweat it for the last 5 minutes and oh yeah, there's nothing to show for it. It was just cool that we made you do that though, right? It's like no guys.
honestly, I'm okay, but there has to be something. You're right. There has to be something. Even for the stuff in Death's Door that has wound up with like me getting a shiny, which is one of the like weird collectible pieces. I don't know if like the listener knows that. I'm hoping that you do.
Yeah, as a crow, you're collecting shiny objects. Yeah, there's 24 various story style objects that tells some really interesting stuff. Yeah, so there's inevitably always something at the end of those kinds of little exploratory kind of side quests, you know.
The only complaint I have about that is there's not a quick way back from some of them.
Some of them, they generally give you like drop offs and stuff.
I guess the one that I'm specifically talking about, there's a hook. You need the hook shot spell. In the commission or as the bureau, wherever, like the office building that is the hub world of the game, and you follow a bunch of like signposts, and at the end there's a shiny, and then you have to do the same signposts puzzle, and I'm just like, you know what? It's 7 signposts. It's a couple of difficult shots, but it was one of those things where I'm just like, man, I wish that if I had fallen off, I would have landed back at the beginning of this. It was the only time that I ever felt that way. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I can see that. I love getting around the hook shot. It's like the only way that I get around now is I just hook shot things and pull myself across the map. So like it's better, it's faster than walking for me.
Yeah.
So I guess like yeah, I guess if there was some way to say like take me back to the beginning, that would have been nice. But it, you know, it was still faster than if they had just given me a hallway.
Fair. Oh man, I'm excited. So you have not finished the game, right? I finished Ori and then I turned on the jet booster.
No, but as opposed to what you're doing, as I am making an attempt to get as much of it percented as possible. I do think I'm probably going to hit a wall on a couple of things because I've finally come up against some side bosses that are purposely intense. But I was able to beat 1 or 2 of them out of the 3 that I found so far. And so like I know I can do it, but like I also am feeling, man, like that you know, it's a punishment game. Like that's it's in that vein of games that like we're gonna punish you because that's part of the fun, which is fine because it also rewards you in a lot of ways. Like I said, like the punishment always comes with a great feeling of accomplishment when you're able to get through it, if not also like a MacGuffin of some kind, right? So in that vein, like it's very well balanced. But at some point with those games, like I always kind of tap out, and it's a testament to Death's Door that what I want to do is finish the main game at the very least. Well,
I will say
versus something like Ori, where I do feel like there were definitely moments in that game, and the more and more that you talk about like your feelings with Ori, it's a lot of the same reasons why I turned away from Hollow Knight. Is like just like going around discovering, filling out maps, and finding all the various rooms and cool stuff was like fun to a point, but at some point it just becomes like challenge for the sake of the challenge, and that's not my bag.
Well, so I want to stay with Death's Door real quick, and then we'll go to that. The punishment is actually not as bad as it is in games like Shovel Knight or Dark Souls, which like sort of started that punishment thing. You don't lose souls when you die in Death's Door. Right. You only lose progress, and they are very generous with the shortcuts. To the fact that by the end of it, I was doing the old Dark Souls thing of, I'm going to just rush and open up all the shortcuts and then explore at my leisure. But what I had done, because I wanted to try to 100% it, I'll say that. But I had set a timer for myself, and I'm like, all right, at this point, I need to focus on completing the main story. And I did that, and that's how I was able to do it. But I mean, where you are right now, because you're in the castle, right? Heading to the beast. I don't know. I don't want to do that. Sorry. The Mac Mini wants me to use my iPhone as a web camera. That's a weird thing to have like come up while I'm recording. Thanks, Mac Mini.
It's also not beneficial if you're sitting at the Mac Mini to then turn on your phone as your camera. Wait, does the computer not have a camera of its own anymore?
Well, it's a Mac Mini, so it's literally just a cube. Not even a cube. It's more of a square. Technically, it would still be a cube. Well, it's not. I don't know. I don't know what it's called. What is the name for a cube that is not actually made of squares?
I think just a polygon at that point.
Yeah, right? So it's a polygonal, vaguely square-shaped device. It's like a computer. It's like a mini computer. It's not an iMac where like you have it built in. So I think that's why. Sorry.
You want to turn your camera on so that we can look at our faces together? Want to look at faces?
No, I don't have a camera attached to this. I don't have my iPhone downstairs.
Oh, well, that's a different conversation.
Yeah. That's the other thing is like, use your iPhone as a webcam. It's like, well, okay, I don't have my iPhone right now.
Yeah. Cuboid, by the way, is the word you were looking for.
Cuboid, yeah. So it's
for anything that's not a cube, but is made up of
but it's a cube.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a cuboid shaped little.
It's cube-esque.
Yeah. The reason why the Mac Mini is the intro version is the fact that, unlike the iMac, it doesn't come with anything.
Yeah.
Where the iMac is a screen and a keyboard and a mouse, you're essentially just buying a desktop computer, and then you have to BYO keyboard, mouse, and monitor.
Yeah.
And then I already have all of those things, because those are the things I love. I do. I love all of those things, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it. Back to Death's Door. Yeah, it's not as punishing, which is enjoyable. But then Ori, I mean, those punishing moments, they felt really good. The only thing they dissuaded me from was completing all of the achievements. And that's because of the one achievement that's get through on one life. And it's like, your game is built to have these beautiful chase sequences that, like, are assholes. Like, honestly... what the fuck are you talking about? Beat this game on one life. Like, that is a level of perfection that you're asking from me that, I mean, the final chase sequence pissed me off so much. And mostly because I knew I was right at the end. Every time I died. But yeah, and then to talk about Hollow Knight, when did you play Hollow Knight? Did you play Hollow Knight when it was new, or did you wait a couple of years?
So when it first came out, I had tried it because it was like huge when it first came out, but it was really not my bag. So like I spent like maybe an hour with it when it had come out. And I walked away. I think I was able to get it in like a Humble Bundle or something for like, somehow I paid like $2 for it. But recently I went back to it and played a lot more of it when it came up as I think it was free on PlayStation Plus or something a couple of months back. And so probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I gave it a really good try, and I put about 6 or 7 hours into it, but that's still not enough. Like that game is huge now with all of the DLC and stuff they've added to it.
And I think that's my biggest issue with it now. I think if I had played it when it was new, I would have been able to get into it the way that I've seen other people get into it. But playing it once the 5 DLCs were just injected into the game, it's hard to tell.
Right, and it's that really beautiful type of DLC that I really appreciate, where it is folded right into the game. Like, you don't even know like you've walked into DLC content if you weren't like paying attention,
Right, and that's cool, but it makes the game feel huge. And then to find out at the end of something that this was just DLC content, it wasn't working towards the main story, like that got me twice in that game. And I'm like, oh, okay. I thought that this was the next thing I had to do because it's where I came to.
You see, and like I really do appreciate that, but you're right in that it takes the game out of the realm of like a weekend experience and puts it firmly in the this is your life for the next few weeks, right? And those are two different types of video games. Like I love both. Like as far as like a weekend experience, right? Like me and the family have been playing the There Is No Game puzzle game. Have you played this at all?
No,
Either
I don't know.
there used to be a Flash version of it, and then they built out a full-blooded game of it, and it's available on all consoles now, and it's phenomenal. It's this great little. It takes the idea of a point and click and really turns it on its head. It's really funny. It's really smart. The puzzles are all really engaging, and it's really cool. The ways in which it plays with like the meta sense of like the fourth wall, and and you have to figure out how to play the game when there is no game, and it's fun. But purely a weekend experience. Like it is really easy to pop in and out of. It's really fun to play, even though it's not multiplayer. Just having 3 or 4 people sitting around like throwing stuff at the screen and seeing what works, type of stuff. But there's nothing that's driving me to like when I get home from work hop on by myself and figure shit out. Like I wanna wait until the family's available. I only wanna I don't want to do it on a day when I have other shit to do, like that kind of thing. Versus something like Death's Door for me, which has become like I need to, any second I've got, I want to dedicate like even just 20 minutes at my lunch break to tackling a certain part of that game that I'm struggling with, just so that I can figure out what the next step is and stuff. So it has become my life, and so there's those 2 levels of which like I slot games in my life, right? And Hollow Knight was so firmly in that earlier one of like, yeah, I'll check this out on the weekends when I got some time that I can really dedicate a few hours to this and see where I get. And if I don't finish it, I don't finish it. But if I do, like that's cool. And now there's so much packed into that game that it's just like I could never do it justice in that realm, and I don't care to move it into the other, right? Like the amount of like dedication you have to give to that game has surpassed the amount of enjoyment I personally would get out of it. So it's no longer a game that I'm really ever probably going to find myself spending too much time with. Who knows? Like the other thing is that my tastes change on a fucking whim lately, right? So maybe in 2 years I'll suddenly be like, oh, I'm so deep into Hollow Knight now. Like, but we'll see what happens in that regard. But right now it's too much for me.
I mean, the question that I find myself facing is the Silk Song of it all, right? Apparently, there's going to be a sequel to Hollow Knight, right? Everybody has been saying this forever. They've said it's happening, but every time there's a presentation and Silk Song isn't listed, everybody's like, no Silk Song? And it's like, I don't even know if it's really coming. But my question is, I enjoyed Hollow Knight up to the point where I got Hollow Knight fatigue, but then I still did everything in it because I didn't want to get beaten by that game. And then my question is, will Silk Song be like its own experience, or will it feel the way I felt about Hollow Knight, where I'm going down a hallway and I feel like this has to be the way I'm supposed to go, and then at the end of it I find out, yeah, you just beat the DLC for the Beehive, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought I was doing real things.
And like I think that a good DLC can be real, right? Like can be really beneficial to the story. Sometimes though it can be detrimental. We've done the song and dance about Catwoman before in Batman, right? Like where like they literally pulled parts of the story out to the point where it was kind of you were literally missing pieces of the story if you didn't have that DLC, and that seems like that's the wrong way to go about it. But then like I just spent the last 3 months on like a deep dive on Mass Effect, and Mass Effect 2 holds up. Like I don't know if we ever really went back to talk about it, but like when I finished Mass Effect 2, I sat back and it was one of those moments where I was like, I just played one of the most important video games I think that it was ever made. Like, and I had always kind of known that was the world that it had lived in, with the ways in which it affected everything that came after it, the ways that it improved on everything that had come before it. Like Mass Effect 2 truly is a masterpiece, and it's part of the reason why I think 3 gets as much shit as it did. Is not that 3 is as bad as people make it out to be, but in comparison to coming after 2, it just wasn't fair, right? That Mass Effect 2 has a very famous DLC in which one of the characters from 1 that you kind of run into in 2 gets fleshed out a lot more in the DLC. You're just like, oh good, we're spending more time with this character. and it introduces this entire idea of this romantic storyline with them that was kind of there, but like it improves on it. It changes the world in the which, like, the way that that character becomes a grand player in that world in which they weren't before. Like, it changes so much. I cannot imagine that game or that world without that DLC being played. But at the same time, there's a huge swath of people that love that game that never played that DLC and still love it just as much. So like they somehow managed to find that balance of creating a DLC that felt so important to the story and so important to my experience in that world going forward, and that's great. But it doesn't seem to have affected some people out there that didn't play that, especially because that game has that idea that like some people want to romance this character, some people want to romance that character, and depending on what you choose, you're going to see different things. So not everybody's experienced that game the same way anyway from the get-go, right? So I guess maybe that benefits it in some way, that like it's able to get away with this huge DLC package that is literally like world-changing, that some people are just like, yeah, not for me, and it works. It's okay. They're able to move on in that world, and that's really, really it's a really hard balance to strike, and it's just, again, more to the point that Mass Effect 2 is as good as it is because they are able to find that balance with that kind of DLC package.
Yeah, I mean, it's literal choose your own adventure at that point, which is cool. Right. But that means that if you don't have the same experience or you don't watch that DLC, you still got to build the adventure that you wanted.
You still had a story of your own, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's cool. That's an interesting thing. So I mean, Death's Door, I played through and I really enjoyed the game. I liked that it's like, I don't want to say baby's first Dark Souls because I feel like there's an insulting tone there that I don't really mean.
No, but an introductory Souls-like is something that I think we really need more of in this in the scape right now, because Souls-likes have become such popular games that like we need to start having some tiered versions of them, because we need to have something for people like me that like I'm very interested in games, but like those are not my jam all the time. So if those are the only games coming out, I feel kind of like there's nothing being made for me right now. And then Death's Door comes along and goes, no, there's still room for you in this world. And it's like, yeah, okay, good. like you know, like, and I think we need more of that. I think we need more kind of open-armed like punishment games, because I the way that this game is able to be so kind while at the same time just kicking my ass is delightful.
Yeah, I mean, and this is not meant with any insult, Sejin. I'm just being honest with you. The fact that when I was playing this game, my thought process was, this is a Souls-like game that Sejin is going to finish. I don't think that there's anything that you're going to come up against that's going to completely shut you out of the experience.
No, I mean, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Is like it finds this really interesting way to strike this balance of still being a punishing game and like death still being part of the story and like, you know, and that whole thing. But at the same time, I don't feel like when I'm dying in this game, it's because I am incapable. Either I'm making a mistake or I'm coming up against something that is just new, so I don't know what fight patterns look like and stuff, right? I never feel like I, as a gamer, need to quote unquote get good in order to keep playing this game. I do feel like I'm getting better that mentality is still present without the attitude, which is wonderful. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I'm glad I did it. I mean, I ended up having more fun with it than Ori, but now that I'm post game, and it's one of those ones, I will say this, spoilers there, it doesn't roll you right into a new game plus like a Dark Souls game, which was something I was a little bit nervous about, where I'm like, I'm just gonna run and make sure that I finish the game. It does not have that. It does give you the time to explore after the fact, which very happy. That makes me very happy. Sorry. Sorry, I don't know. I'm just.
No, it just and that makes sense narratively as well, right? Like the ways in which it takes all of these mechanics that we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes and beautifully folds it into a narrative reason for all of this stuff to exist. It also helps, right? That's the other big thing for me, and it's one of the few things that has kept me interested in things like Dark Souls and Bloodborne versus something like, say, Elden Ring, because the narrative on Elden Ring is fucking inscrutable. But at least with like Bloodborne and some of the stuff in Souls, not everything in Souls, but there is like there's a narrative thread that I can really like sink my teeth into to kind of like if I don't have anything else to hold on to, I can hold on to this, right? And Death's Door has that in fucking droves. Like there's always something narratively to push you forwards if something mechanically is starting to get in your way. You know, whether it's because you're like, this mechanic is not as robust as I had hoped it was, because that happens. It's a smaller game, so there's definitely like some puzzles that they give you that you're just like bing bang boom, like okay, like there was not much thought on my end to solve this, but it was, you know, it was cool that it was there because it taught me how to properly use this new tool that I have, right, at the very least. But more importantly, like I'm able to now get through the woods so that I can find the horn for this character that one needs to play it in order to like right, like even if the mechanic is not quote unquote interesting to me, which is not fair because I love like the mechanics and the ways in which they all kind of overlap on each other, especially the deeper you get into them in this game. But there are definitely moments where like you're not even thinking about the mechanics because you've been doing them now for over and over and over and over again, and so you're no longer focused on that. There is something to fall back on, and that is the gorgeous artwork and the gorgeous narrative and all of this stuff going on as well. Yeah,
it is a fantastic immersive experience. But where it's getting for me, and the reason why I'm like, I might be walking away from it, I don't know if I'm going to get the 100%, is undeniably it's very Tunic-like in some of the things of the game. The isometric view, the exploration, and a lot of the mechanics in there. And it's getting to that point where in Tunic, I'm like, now you're asking me to not play a video game, but like go and talk to people online, and we can all get together to solve this mystery. And I'm not interested in that. And that's where I'm at with Death's Door.
Yeah, well, and I feel like if you were able to complete the game before you got to that point, and then I think that they've done their due diligence.
They've done their job,
in making that something that you can do if you want to keep being involved in this, but that you're not required to do in order to have a full experience. And that's the balance, right? And it's awesome that they strike that with something like this. I will probably go down that route because I also love that shit. I'm somebody that was like, early days of Fez was like shitting myself with excitement at all of the stuff going on meta game wise with Fez. Yeah,
I don't know. It's I don't know why I'm at that disconnect. I think it's the biggest issue for me with Death's Door, right? Again, I've enjoyed my experience, but the lack of a map I've never complained about a lack of a map in a video game before.
I know.
Right? Like that's the thing. The lack of a map in Death's Door means that I do not feel as enticed to go back and explore.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Man, as
like
somebody that sings the praises of the minimap, I love having a minimap accessible. I understand the idea that not everybody wants it, and mechanically, game mechanic wise, having it right in front of the player is not always beneficial. But give it to me buried then in the menus. Like give me something so that I can go dig this up and look into it. I mean, at the end of the day, I could start drawing them myself, which is really kind of what this game really encourages you to do is rather than go looking for stuff online, because I could do that. I could just hop online and see where things are. What I'm more interested in doing first is doing the old 90s like college try notes on the back of the instruction manual, like draw my own maps just so I can check off where I've been and what I need to find.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that it's got a lot of Metroidvania in it, right? For a 3D game, and I mean that's all Zelda is basically 3D Metroidvanias. But like me trying to remember where all of the places I saw, oh, I bet I can use the hook shot there, has not been fun for me.
I will also say though, the game is small enough that what I've been doing in those cases, and maybe this kind of speaks to what I was saying at first, where I was kind of running around for a little bit, and rather than focusing on the main story, I like going back to places in this game and seeing where that stuff is. So I have found a ton of stuff simply just by running around again. And like part of it is that I like the fight mechanics. So like getting into the fights again is cool with me. Also, it's helping me gather my for all intents and purposes XP, right? Like the souls that you collect, like so that you can then power yourself up. Because that's the other thing, is that I'm also using it as it's a twofold thing for me right now. Is I'm going around collecting souls so I can power up, and I'm looking for stuff that I may not have had access to before without those tools. So like I'm kind of I feel like I'm still progressing while I'm doing that. Now, you're further along than I in that regard, so maybe you don't feel that any longer, and again, that drive is taken away. But with the tight size of this world, the ways in which you were saying before, they're really generous with shortcuts, and then on top of all of that, the fact that there is this push to collect souls in order to upgrade, like the idea of going back to old places to explore a bit and see what I couldn't do before that I can do now is like still super fun for me where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely went back and did that stuff, right? I'm curious. So the bosses that you discussed, right? Like the mini bosses, what happened when you beat one of them? You said you were able to defeat one of them. So I don't want to spoil that for you.
So I think with the first one that I beat, I'm trying to remember if there was a big prize at the end of that. I mean, I think that was how I found the dual daggers for the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got all the weapons and stuff now essentially, and
I don't have. I'm missing the one that you get by the boat area.
Oh, the broadsword?
Yeah.
That one's actually super easy because you don't even have to fight for that one. You just go around and break open walls.
Yeah,
there's like clues on the thing, and the clues are pretty straightforward, and they're all within like a 5-minute walk of each other. And so you just go around and just bomb some walls and flip some switches.
Yeah, I had found that area earlier, so then when it came time to go back, I just used a door to warp there. So I don't even know what you're talking about. Like I just took the door and then continued on the mission.
And if you go to the so that's in one of my favorite areas of the game because it's at the bar, the Salted Sailor or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if you go in there and get food, he like tells you where stuff is.
Yeah, he's like
yeah.
Well, the problem that I'm having there is that he's repeated stuff, and I'm like, but I've already done that. But then I question, did I already do that? Like the frustration is coming from.
Yeah.
Like
I have not yet had him say something that I've already done. Whenever I do stuff, I go back to him and he's had new stuff to say. I did not realize he'd repeat stuff eventually.
I mean, because he said that I like forgot something in the witch's house, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I did exactly what you're talking about already, guy.
Well, there's like the one behind the witch's house. Is that the one that you did? Where
No,
you like go around to the back?
I did the one inside of the. He says that there's like a wayward bull platform might lead you there. And I'm like, well, I did that. I found that. And did I miss something over there? And it's just like, I don't need the riddles game.
It's just
like you were so straightforward with some of this stuff. And I mean, I have enjoyed it. I mean, what weapon are you using? So that's it. So I don't know.
The broadsword's pretty fucking badass because it basically is the only downside, the only con to the broadsword is that it's only 2 swings. Everything else has more swings to it, but other than that, it's the most powerful, and like my ability to power up a hard swing is also pretty good at this point. So like I'm just taking big hard swings with that thing constantly and one-shotting and two-shotting everything.
I did everything with the daggers.
The daggers,
I'm like DPS all day.
See, the problem with the daggers is that it's a 6 swing. See, so this is one of the things that I really was loving about this game is that the differences are kind of really subtle. Like you don't really pick up on them at first until you spend some time with like the weapons are a perfect example of this because like I was running around with the sword and then I found the dual daggers and the hammer and I was like trying to figure out. I was like, all right, what is my main line here? And I kept coming back to the sword, but it was all because that was what I had spent the most time with at that point. After a while, the hammer really kind of became my go-to because like the ways in which it does area damage and stuff like that. In addition, like I was really digging like the ability to like hit one guy a couple of times, and by the time I had finished him off, other guys in the area had already taken enough damage that I was really only just doing like one swing to take those guys out too. Especially when you come up against like the groups of spiders that like you know some enemies in that game will group up on you, and the more that they group up, the more likely that the hammer is your best option. But you don't notice that at first because it's only the more and more that you power your strength up, the more and more that area damage really does anything. Like it's clearly doing something but it's not doing enough to really negate like an extra swing or something until you're about 3 or 4 high powered up in strength. Then at that point, that's when it's taking like full swings off of your whole math. And so like the subtle differences in what you're doing as you power up and as you find different things has been really interesting, because it has not been like a clear cut like you powered up, everything will go down in one less hit now. Like that's not how this game works. Like
Yeah,
it's crazy the amount of minuscule math that this game actually is asking you as a player to kind of do on the fly. But it's all about the groove. It's all about feeling it. So my main weapon now, though, is definitely that broadsword that I just found.
all right, well, I guess I gotta find that. I mean, I know where it is. I know it's by the sailor, but I have to go back and explore if I want to do that. But I love the dagger so much because it's 6 swings, so I know that.
I mean, I even took out a couple of things with the umbrella. Like,
oh, I haven't. I didn't. I found the umbrella, but I didn't do anything with it.
I don't know what the point of it is. I feel like
there's a challenge run for it. The only thing is that if you get it early and then you beat the game using only the umbrella.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, okay. So it's what, the strength of the daggers, but with the swing speed of the sword, I think is how it comes out. It's weird. I don't know.
And I think it only has 3 swings, whereas the daggers have 6.
Right. Well, that's why the swing speed of the sword. So it's the 3 swings of the sword, but with the strength cap of the dagger.
But there is there's also the speed of attack in addition to how many attacks, because like the daggers will hit really quick and do 6 attacks, which is great. The sword will hit quick but only do 3. The hammer will hit slow but does like heavy damage, and then the broadsword is super slow and only has 2 hits. Like the tier math on that stuff is really wild.
I was just going off of what is. When you go to the weapons, it's the same sort of stats between the dagger and the umbrella.
Right. Yeah. There are. So it is somewhere between the sword and the dagger for sure.
Yeah.
Is where the umbrella falls. Whereas, so like, dagger is definitely like the quickest, like most amount of hits, and so I can totally see why you would go for that. Sword is a really nice mid, and the broadsword is definitely the slowest, but man, it hits so hard. And like I said, you power up your damage enough and you power up your swing speed enough, because that's the other thing, is you can also power up your speed through the power-ups. It doesn't you're kind of negating some of the cons at that point, which is beautiful.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, because I was with the dagger, it was just, I felt like I was just melting everything. And it was excellent. Like, it felt really good. But, I mean, I'll let you finish before we talk any further on the game, because story stuff is what I'm really excited to talk about on that one. I'll be completely honest with you. Because, it opens up after what you're doing. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I've gotten hints at what's going on in the world and like deals that have been made and things like that, but I definitely don't have all of the information yet.
Yeah, so I'm excited to go back to that. So let's transition to something else. Did you do anything else game related this week, or has it just been Death's Door for you? And it's not a game.
Yeah, I mean, the only other big thing that we've been doing is we found another family like couch game in called Good Job, and it is phenomenal. It's it's in the same vein as something like what's the cooking one?
Overcooked.
So it's like Overcooked in some regards, kind of in the chaos. But the beautiful thing about Good Job is that it's Moving Out is the other one from the same guys, I think, as Overcooked. But it's in that same vein of like you're all on the same screen, and there's a series of quests. What's the goals that you're trying to achieve, and you just kind of tick them off one by one. But unlike those games, there's no time element to Good Job. It is entirely just all about the silliness of the physics, and about like there's no real like fail state, for instance, in any of them. But there's so much silly physics nonsense going on in that game that like you end up spending just so much time just fucking around, like not doing the goals. So essentially you play as a worker in a business in a company building, and you start off in the mailroom and you work your way up to CEO, right? Like that's the driving kind of narrative for lack of it's not really that deep of one.
Yeah.
Like the important bit is that you're in an office building and there's a bunch of office stuff around, right? So like you might get a job where it's like, hey, it's your job today to go plug in the projector for the presentation. So you need to go up to the third floor and go plug in this projector for them. So you ride your elevator up to the third floor and you get off, and it's this big conference room style floor, and like you need to get into a room, but oh, the projector's locked in this room. So you could find a key, because there's a chance that there's like a key around, or you could just go and grab the nearest like couch and fucking like fling it through the wall so that you can go through the wall to grab the projector and roll it out. So it's really like, do you want to do this the quote unquote right way, or do you want to have some fun?
Or do you want to destroy property and probably get fired in the real world?
Well, and like the best part is like it's counting money for like how much damage you're doing, but that's not a punishment. Like the more money you get, the higher the grade you get. So like it's actively encouraging you to just engage in madness.
Think outside the box is what they would call it in an office building.
Well, think outside the box about how you would destroy that box to get into that box, so that you can then destroy what's inside that box. But there's this beautiful like layer of it in playing it multiplayer, because the family's been playing it multiplayer, and it doesn't have to be, but like the chaos just fucking just is tenfold once there's more than one person, because you're running into each other, you're throwing shit at each other, you're fucking each other up on whatever, like even if you're actively working towards the goals, you might actually accidentally do something at working against each other. And like it's all part of the fun. It's just utter fucking madness. And then like we had a little bit of a weird moment the other day because somebody glitched out just a little bit and they got stuck on an elevator but between floors, and they were like, I guess I'll just sit out the rest of this. And so they were still having fun watching the rest of us in this madness. But then I realized, I was like, wait a minute, if I pull this forklift over and I don't put it in the elevator but I put it on top of the elevator, and then just as we're underneath you, I'm gonna raise the forklift and essentially raise you out of the ground. I think we can do that. And the physics completely allowed for it. Like it was like yeah, of course you could do this. It's like why would they let you do it this way? But they did. So I was able to like save this person out of this like weird like realm that they had found themselves in, because they had fallen out of the elevator in just the wrong way.
Cool. I like that. I like games where you can still solve problems even though it feels like you broke it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that is really what the game is about, is like how much shit can you truly break, and the ways that things interact with each other is really cool, because you can quote unquote plug certain things in, and they do things. So if you plug in a vending machine, it might start spitting out soda cans, or if you plug in a copy machine, it might start like spitting out copies. And so like you can try and see like, okay, if we get this copy machine here in this spot, it's going to start spitting out copies, which will actually fall down to the next floor, and then on the next floor it's going to trip up this guy who's walking around with his coffee, who's going to spill it on this computer, and then that's going to blow up the door and we can get in. Like the ways in which you have to kind of start playing.
You're building a Rube Goldberg device, right?
Yeah,
there.
it's fucking crazy. Like, and it's so much fun, and it's so goofy.
Cool, very cool, excellent. I've done like more Vampire Survivor stuff, but I already finished all that, so it's just having fun with that game since it's set up now to play. And then I think I'm finally going to do Doom. I think I've been wanting to do Doom on Game Pass, and like now that's it. But also, I don't really want to start anything. Like I bought the Advance Wars reboot, and I'm excited to like do it. But at the same time, on Friday, I'm restarting Breath of the Wild. Yeah. So I don't want to be in like the middle of anything. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do like another run at Resident Evil 4 or things like that. But I mean, it's been a good week for gaming. I mean, the undeniably. But in addition to that, Hulu, because Hulu's crazy, got the entire second season of Single Drunk Female, even though only one of the episodes has aired on TV. Probably two now.
Okay, did that happen on purpose, or did they fuck something up?
I don't know. I feel like I don't know why they're all available, because I don't think they've all aired at this point. I know that they came back the 13th of April was when the show was like back. I think it's actually a Wednesday show. So it probably aired on the 12th, and then like it will be on Hulu on the 13th. So I mean, it's
not some terrible case of like the
show's been canceled. Honestly, I meant to look into it, and I just didn't. Like it's really strange how it looks, though, because it looks like everything's aired, but I don't believe that it has.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, are you familiar with Single Drunk Female at all?
No.
Yeah, well, unsurprising is going to be the nice thing that I say about that. It's on Freeform. I don't know
Oh, okay.
anyone who
Okay.
watches Freeform, and it's
Yeah.
kind of just like Mom, if like Mom was a 20-year-old instead of a 40-year-old,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And it's good. I mean, it's Sophie Blackdelia. Yeah, I know her from like The Mick. I don't know of anything else that she's done, but yeah, it looks like everything just aired on the 12th and 13th, according to. I'm on IMDb right now,
Yeah.
and it's. I don't know if there's a reason for that. That they're like, we're just gonna run them all,
I
and
don't
now
know,
the
man.
show is
TV's gotten
over.
so fucking weird. Like the ways in which I don't think that television channels. I don't know if they know what the fuck they're doing anymore. Like with the way that streaming has kind of become the norm for so many people. I think that we're really starting to see television flounder in trying to figure out how to run its shit. I found myself watching TV for the first time in a long time this weekend, and I was on a local channel out here in Utah, and they took a half an hour program, and which it already was technically 22 minutes with 3 breaks in it or whatever, right? And somehow managed to make it a 45-minute program with just commercials every 2 minutes. And that's how they apparently run their shit now, is they do like Golden Girls, but it's not going to be from 8 to 8:30. It's Golden Girls from 8 to 8:40, and then Frasier will come on from 8:45 to 9:30, and it's like, what the fuck are we doing? They are purposely padding shows with more commercials now because that's what they have to do to survive.
I mean, that, as gross as that sounds, it feels like what TBS is doing a lot of the times, where they used to be offset on when shows would start.
Oh, yeah, they would do that all the time. But, notably, those were always like the pay channels that were just kind of in that package, not like the local, like, ABC
Not
9
over the
or
air
whatever,
stuff,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Whew, that's crazy. This was like an ABC, NBC, CBS affiliate. This wasn't like a rewind or a laugh. Like,
Yeah, so from what I can understand, this is just what they're like on Saturdays. I don't know.
okay,
I pointed again. I don't watch TV. I pointed it out. We were at somebody's house, and I pointed out that I was like, it's weird that this is still going. And they were like, "Oh yeah, this is what it's like now." And it's like, okay, I did not know that.
I was unaware of this shift.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm right there with you that TV doesn't know what it's doing. Magnum PI came back late. I think, let's see, it's been 9 episodes, and so 9 weeks. That's roughly means February it came back. I think it was February 6th that it came back, if I'm doing the math in my head real quick. And they came back with 2 episodes right out of the gate, and now the 10th episode is airing tonight, because we're recording on the Sunday, and that is being called the spring finale of Magnum PI. Now,
Okay.
what the fuck does that mean? Have you ever seen a spring finale before?
Usually
Like, that's just the
season
finale, right? Like,
right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we talked a while back, like years ago, about how CW had really kind of emphasized and created this whole winter finale thing, especially with like shows like Supernatural and anything in the Arrowverse, like where we're gonna do this big event thing for
yeah.
Christmas and then go away for a few months and then come on back for the spring premiere. So like that ball kind of got started a few years ago. So I'm not too surprised to hear that it's finally hit this point.
Spring finale is something that blew my mind, because like that's just the end of TV, right?
Well, I think it's because nothing is promised or guaranteed anymore. Like this kind of goes to a larger conversation that we've had about show creators in general nowadays, and the ways in which they will utilize our kind of limited understanding of how this stuff works. They will try and use that to, build on their art. I'm being as kind as I can be here, but like the fact that we know that this is the season finale, so let's go ahead and end it on a cliffhanger is like prime example of that, right? Like play with audience expectations in order to create good drama on TV. That's just what they've always done. Let's use the format of the medium as part of the storytelling technique, whether that's a mechanic or a narrative thing or what. And so like I think that's what they've lost track of, because people are not doing destination viewing anymore, because there is no like we need to be watching this by 9 p.m. on this night, and the entire world is in on that conversation. Since that doesn't exist anymore, TV doesn't really know what to do with its structure any longer, right? So the idea being like, do we just put everything out at once and then we'll just syndicated throughout the summer. And you know, like, yeah, you could have seen these already when they premiered. If you didn't, it's okay because they're gonna play again. Like, that's interesting if that's what they end up doing with Single White Female, or what is it,
Single drunk female. Yeah.
Weird. It's a weird reference to Single White Female. Hey, not comedic story in any way.
It's also, she's not single for like so much of the series.
Oh my God. Fantastic.
Yeah,
awesome.
it's.
But then with the Magnum PI stuff, right? Like, they're saying that because maybe they don't know when they're going to come back, right? Without that hard promise of you'll be back in September,
yeah.
They don't know. Like, maybe they'll come back in July, so technically they'll have a summer
season. So they'll have a summer season. And honestly, I could see them doing that.
Maybe they won't be back. Yeah, maybe they won't be back until like January of next year, where they'll have a winter premiere. You know, like they are so in the weeds because they honestly don't know what's going to happen from day to day with the structure of their show, that they don't want to commit to anything anymore. And it's creating a really huge problem as an audience. And because you want, as a creator, to create a full experience in what you're doing, right? But if you don't know if you're going to get the opportunity to do a second season, if you don't know if you're even going to have the opportunity to finish the season you're on, you don't have the opportunity to know when your episodes are going to air, you just can't bank on anything anymore with television. So like, how do you create in that kind of bubble? And I don't envy television creators right now trying to figure that shit out. Like, if you're not working at like a pretty straightforward place like AMC, where like, you know, this is the structure, or someplace like HBO or Showtime, where like, you know, it's going to be the Sunday night slot at this time, and that's pretty much guaranteed because of the safety of the financial well-being of that place in order to run that way. Like, if you're not in one of those kind of safe spaces, you're off on your own, man. It's fucking wild west.
Yeah, I mean, for Magnum, they did say it's going to be 2 additional seasons when NBC picked it up from CBS. Yep. But now my thought is that mean that like there's going to be more season 5, or is it a 10-episode season 5 and a 10-episode season 6? Just because of everything that we've seen with how Netflix and Hulu have structured their series. You're right. Yep. It's a very strange thing. And actually, Google, regarding Single Drunk Female, it looks like they're showing 2 episodes every week, and they say that the next episodes are airing on the 26th of April. So I don't know why all 10 episodes went up on friggin' Hulu right at the beginning of it. I know that they own it, right? Freeform is technically Hulu Disney stuff, right? So they can do that.
Up in that whole thing.
Yeah. And maybe they do, like when they did Flatch, and they're like, we're going to put up the first 7 episodes of Flatch, and maybe we'll build an audience before we do it.
Freeform is what ABC Family eventually became Fox Family, like that whole
Fox line, Family right? became ABC Family became Freeform.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what that is all wrapped up in is that every time they've changed hands like that and everything has gone kind of sideways for them, they've also been included in less and less packages.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that you might be seeing is the fact that with Freeform not being available everywhere, that they are probably like, well, we want this show to have an audience. So they're also like throwing it up on Hulu just because that's probably getting to more people than it is when they show it on TV. Like, the ways in which the television landscape has been forced to change and alter itself in order to fit in with all the streaming stuff has been really interesting. And I think that all that we're seeing now is like, there's some of them that are just realizing that they're not going to really survive as television platforms, and they need to figure out how to work on the streaming side of things before they lose everything. You know, because I don't know how much time is left for something like cable when more and more people are cord cutting.
I mean, speaking on that, right, and tangentially connected, the fact that they're going to drop the HBO from HBO Max and just call it Max is fucking insane to me.
Well, and I don't understand, because I heard that, then I heard that Discovery was actually Discovery Plus, which that's part of the reason they were calling themselves Max is because they were going to fold the Discovery stuff into it, and so it was going to be more than HBO. And this is where we get into the realm more of like kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not slander, but rumors, right? Like,
yeah.
This is where we kind of get into the rumor mill aspect of it. But there was something to be said about the idea that HBO did not necessarily want to be associated with some of the Discovery stuff because a lot of it is going to be things like reality TV and stuff. And in not wanting to associate HBO with for lack of a better term, shitty program.
Garbage, yeah.
Yeah, like, they don't want HBO. They don't want the name HBO to be on a service where the majority of that service is slowly going to become this reality TV garbage. They just didn't want that. So the idea is that we'll just call it Max. But then all of this news came out that they're actually not going to get rid of Discovery Plus for a while. That right now they've got in their words, they've got too many customers that they want to honor, or some, like, they use some weird businessy way to talk about their beloved customers that they don't want to alienate. Essentially, there's a bunch of old people paying $5 a month for Discovery that don't want to pay the $10 a month for HBO, and so like that's they're realizing that they could lose money in that regard, and so they don't want to get rid of Discovery Plus. So if that's happening, then are they going to fold that stuff as quickly into HBO Max as we thought? And at which point is it not Max anymore? And because the other thing is that they also said we're going to honor all of the HBO deals that have been made, because people out there that have paid for HBO with the understanding that they were going to also then have this streaming service included. So like, they're also still tied, their hands are still tied to HBO because of the ways in which they've promised people that. So it is still going to just be the primary HBO streaming service, and now there's a chance that Discovery Plus stuff isn't even going to move over there as quickly as they once thought. So like, what is the whole move with Max? What is that?
All it does now, because I've heard all of that same stuff that you heard, all it does is you lose the brand name recognition of the heavy hitter that is HBO. Right?
Yeah.
Sopranos, Sex and the City, The Wire. We don't want to maybe entice people to our platform with those anymore.
Well, and they've tripped and fallen into really creating a service that is so anti-HBO that I think more people would automatically assume that it's a Cinemax streaming service, the rival service to HBO.
I hadn't even considered that aspect of it. Max was so weird. Like,
yeah, Max is such a weird thing to land on when it is literally like a branding part of your one of your biggest
competitors. Jesus. Yeah. Television is very weird. The only thing I will say about Single Drunk Female, the second season is weird if you've only seen the first season. But there is a Breakfast Club reunion because Molly Ringwald shows up in an episode and is the worst. And I love watching Molly Ringwald act as the worst.
Want to take another
Molly Ringwald? Sorry.
There we go.
I love when she acts as like a character who is the worst, because she was such like the darling in all the John Hughes stuff.
Yeah,
she just
being able to have a sense of humor about herself.
Yeah,
I love Molly Ringwald.
I do too. I'm a big fan, and that's because Ali Sheedy is in the show. She plays the single drunk female's mother.
Nice.
And you know what? Let me tell you, Sujan, the reason why I'd recommend it to you, up, down, left, right, is Ian Gomez is in the show. And I'm such a fan of Ian Gomez. I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna find my Norm Show DVDs.
Yeah, well, we're still in the realm of limited streaming services here too. Like, on top of all of this, I've also cut back hugely on what services I pay for, just like because I just can't anymore. Like right now, I'm paying for HBO and of all things, Dropout TV. Like, those are the two streaming services I'm currently paying for in order to like watch stuff. But other than that, we have Netflix in the house. Somebody else pays for Netflix, but that's because that's just so standard for us. We just couldn't lose it because there's just a lot of like comfort shows on Netflix right now. That may change in the future. That used to be the case with Hulu, but what happened was a lot of the stuff that we were watching pretty religiously on Hulu got folded into other things, whether it was like Peacock got a hold of a couple of things, or Disney, or by the very nature of Hulu being associated with Disney and Fox, they've also now just appeared in other places like Disney Plus, or I mean, weirdly, HBO Max had like picked up Abbott Elementary, which was one of the other big things we were watching. Like, there's so many other places for us to get the stuff we needed to get. We were getting on Hulu that we don't need Hulu anymore.
I guess the last thing I want to say then, because you brought up Abbott Elementary, like, that show's done for the year. They just had their season finale, and so it's like, okay, so ABC is wrapping up shows in April, right? Yep. What is coming next? Like, what? I just don't get it. this has been a real strange week.
I think we're going to see an honest to God actual summer season of television. I think that during the pandemic, a lot of shows got pushed back to this time. A lot of shows got cut off and then came back for the summer. And I think they realized that they were getting a lot of people with eyeballs on TV screens in the summer months. So I think we're going to see a lot of stuff come back for the summer that wasn't traditionally summer watching. It's part of the reason that, like, when you mentioned that Magnum PI mentioned their fall season,
their spring finale.
Spring season finale. Like, I almost wonder if that's because in a couple of months you're just going to see a summer season of that show, that they were like, we need to wrap this up because we need to get back on track and this is now a summer show, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we're not, summer shows existed before, Under the Dome, Zoo, Flashpoint.
Yeah, no, but very pointedly, a lot of experimental one-off miniseries-esque types of things, right?
Or like Canadian shows that were just purchased for redistribution over the summer. I mean, the CW does that in droves with Coroner and Dead Pixels. Like, sorry, just thinking out loud. Sorry to cut you off.
But that's exactly it, right? Is like the summer was traditionally this area, this spot for television to, not that people weren't watching, but that people seem to be a lot more forgiving. It's the same thing in movies, right? Where the summer blockbuster is like a thing, and then you just don't see those throughout the winter. But as we've seen in the film industry, that has kind of all gone to the wayside. Even before the pandemic, that was starting to kind of break down, right? The idea that you wouldn't go to a good movie in February, that had kind of gone out the window even before we got into all this madness of like timetables getting completely fucked up over the last 5 years. And so like we were already kind of reevaluating these old notions of like, what will people sit down and actually watch and when. And so we were kind of were already experimenting, and then this thing came along that kind of forced our hand in a lot of ways to really experiment. I just think that they learned some things and also have realized that like they're getting kind of to the end of their rope on a couple of things. I don't know what the television landscape looks like in 5 years. Like, completely honest, I don't know what channels still exist. I don't know how their structure still works. I don't know. I mean, so many things like HGTV and travel channels and stuff like that have just become just commercials.
Yeah.
Because they get more people watching on DVR and they get more people watching online than they do actually watching live broadcast. So like watching live broadcast anything nowadays is just a slow nightmare.
I mean, the one that's really strange to me is Jeopardy, because like Jeopardy was preempted a bunch because of the March Madness tournament, right? Like Thursday, Friday Jeopardy is just not on. And sometimes they'll like shift it to another channel, like MyRI TV was kind of the backup, but they weren't doing that for those things, right? They weren't doing it this year. And I understand why, right? There's no way to tell people that ahead of time. So like, what are you going to do? But if you go on YouTube, you can start watching That Night's Jeopardy beginning at like 4 p.m. Eastern time, right? Mm-hmm. It's aired somewhere. Someone has downloaded it and put it up on YouTube. And it stays up on YouTube until midnight Eastern time. And I really wonder if like Jeopardy's like, we're going to allow it so that people have the opportunity to see this one episode. And I wonder if like them knowing that or being aware of it, because it's weird that like a copyright strike for an episode of Jeopardy would take like 6 hours in order to process, right? Like,
I mean, the thing about the copyright strike stuff in YouTube, though, is you also start to get into the realm of we don't know what the deal is at YouTube, because that kind of shit's wild. You always hear about how they've got robots that are doing all of this, and people are getting hit left, right, and center with incorrect copyright strikes, right? Like bad faith copyright strikes all the time. But like, yeah, then suddenly there's this thing that really should be getting a copyright strike, and it takes them 6 hours to get to it. What the fuck is going on? I couldn't tell you. I mean. And that's kind of by design, right? Like we're not supposed to really know what's going on there. Yeah. And just, get your cake where you can, I guess. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if you found out that like it was them putting it up.
Well, I mean, there's like, yeah, that's like the real deep conspiracy part of me. But it is one of those things where I dig how it is available if, like, for some reason it's preempted, I can go watch it. I can go watch Jeopardy, but I have to watch it that day, right? So then they would get any ad revenue from it, right? And I can't imagine that you're not going to put ad revenue on that. Like, it's, I don't know. But when you talk about, like, I don't know if we're going to have TV channels in, say, 5 years, I mean, the first thing that I think of is that destination watching that still exists. And that is getting muddled down and ground away. But the only thing that I think of that is an institution in this country in terms of destination viewing is Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune Hour.
Yeah,
like,
or sports. I mean, like, that's the other big thing you got to start thinking about in that regard.
Yeah,
is like the big destination viewing in this country right now is sporting events,
and more of that is on cable only. Like, it's, you could watch so many games right now, but not on ABC, NBC, or CBS. Like,
yeah, and you want to throw a big old monkey wrench into this conversation. The big thing that started to come back recently is video podcasting, you know, and Spotify is really kind of leading the charge on a lot of this, at least from what I've seen, in that they're converting a lot of their current podcasts that they're producing over to video format podcasts, which means that you can still get audio formats, but if you have Spotify up on your computer, or like if you're on a device that has a screen of some kind and you listen to Spotify, it's going to push you the video feed as well, unless you change your settings to otherwise. And you can download those and you can watch those. And that is something that we kind of saw when podcasts first started. They would do the video podcasts. And I think that you're going to see a lot of shows go in that way that are more infotainment oriented. So, like, for instance, one of the big things I used to listen to when I first started getting into podcasts was actually the next week feed of Bill Maher. Like, Real Time with Bill Maher, they would have the episode on Friday night, and by Saturday the episode would be available as an audio podcast. But you could easily see them turn that format into a just putting the episode up, right? And the same for the early days of John Oliver. Famously, John Oliver still talks about how YouTube is really kind of the main place where people are watching John Oliver as opposed to watching it on HBO, which is fine, because, like, now that they know that, I think that they actually do consider that some of those numbers in their viewership, right?
Well, not only do that, if they're not live with a new episode on HBO, they put up a YouTube exclusive episode.
Yeah.
Like, that is them being aware of their audience and making sure that their audience, first of all, that they're not getting squicked out of the algorithm the way that YouTube would if you're not posting weekly.
Right.
But also, if you are somebody who every Monday checks for the new Last Week Tonight video, you're getting a new video.
Well, and, like, he's gone so deep down that rabbit hole where he straight up has had multiple episodes now where there are alternate YouTube exclusive versions of episodes where, like, hey, we're going to talk about, I think he did this with the Hoa episode a couple of weeks back, where he was like, we're going to talk about Hoas, and if you're under the age of 20, this does not matter to you. So we've put up this entire other episode online. And it was, do you know what the other episode was?
It was about Chuck E. Cheese.
It was the history of Chuck E. Cheese.
I really want to watch it. I haven't watched it yet because I have to feel like with all the ire that we throw towards John Oliver and Jest, like, that would be the opportunity for him to strike back because of our Summer of Fun episode.
Oh man, but, like, yeah, so, like, he'll do entirely alternate episodes for that, right? So yeah, so Spotify getting in on this, like, video format for their podcasts, and, like, it's not going to be too long till you see that with other stuff. The McElroy boys that I watch, they've got their entire podcast network that they run. They have video versions of their mainline one, My Brother and Me, that they then put up on YouTube after they've released the episode as a podcast, right? So, like, there's this entire other kind of sleeping giant that's coming that is a lot of the podcasts that people have really gotten into over the last few years, because that has taken off like crazy, are also experimenting with the idea of video formatting, and the places you get those are completely new. Spotify for video entertainment is like if that catches on, is going to be huge, and is going to be a completely different arm to this animal going forward, right?
They should try to pick up the Quibi backlog. Because that's just out there, right? That's just lost media. And
yeah, right. They got to get there's so much lost media between Quibi and CISO and so many other ones that have fallen down over the years. Is BritBox still going? BritBox is
still going. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Every month it says that I'm going to lose all the British shows at the end of the month, and then they're still there the next month. So I don't know what to think. or feel about that. Mighty Boosh has been expiring at the end of the month for the last 3 months. But, you know, I have all those on DVD, so I'm safe if that ever happens.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, we talk about the ways that people consume nowadays and how, you know, TV, just honest to goodness, over the air television has just been losing this fight for years and years and years. And this is just another nail in its coffin now, is the fact that there's now podcasting is starting to get back into the video format and is really taking a swing with stuff.
I mean, most people our age, all they do is watch YouTube, right? Like, YouTube is what people watch now. So it's, I don't know. I'd like to talk about something else, though.
Okay.
It's related to streaming, but it's movies, not television, and is the latest film from Broken Lizard. Are you familiar with this at all?
I mean, like, offhandedly, but I like not enough to feel like I think we should talk about it, but go ahead.
Well, it released on April 20th for some reason. For some reason, Broken Lizard released their new movie on 4/20.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you why. It's a mystery to me. But they did a Quasimodo movie.
Just a big old fuck you to Hitler, right?
Yeah, right. They did a Quasimodo movie called Quasi. Is really good.
What?
It's not. It is. It's super good. It's not a lie. Why would it be a lie? What do you have against the Broken Lizard, guys?
The fact. Okay. Because it is the same guys that, so for people out there that are not aware, these are the guys that did Super Troopers famously, but also did Beer Fest and Club Dread, Puddle Cruisers. That's
Puddle Cruisers, their very first movie from '96. Yeah. The Slammin' Salmon is the one that they followed up Beer Fest with. And then they've also done a sequel to Super Troopers and Super Troopers 2. They also were kind of, sort of the Dukes of Hazzard guys, because Jay Chandrasekhar was the director. So all of them showed up and had their fingers in that movie.
I didn't know. I knew that he directed that. I did not remember them like showing up in it.
All of them have a cameo, which is
since I've watched that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, coming up, right? Because I'm a Sean William Scott completionist, and you know, American Wedding coming this week.
So like,
yeah, and it's honestly the only thing that Broken Lizard is like involved in that I've never seen is the Dukes of Hazzard movie, which is strange.
Yeah, I can't believe you haven't seen it, to be honest.
Yeah, I was never really a big fan of Dukes of Hazzard. Like I had a Dukes of Hazzard watch that I bought.
That movie is not a celebration of the Dukes of Hazzard. I will tell you.
Oh, good. Right that excites me even more. Thank you. I'm glad that we've had this discussion about it. And then also the Broken Lizard guys, Kevin Heffernan and Steve Lemmy, they've broken off and they did the TV show Tacoma FD, where the 4th season is maybe happening. I don't know, but the first 3 seasons are really good.
As you said, TV's a fucking mess. So
yeah, that show's on True TV. You know, where you go to watch like courtroom stuff. That's where the funny show about the fire department in a place that it rains 90% of the time takes place.
You want to know a funny fact about True TV? Is True TV got fucked by the exact same guy in the exact same way that Discovery did. The guy that
David Zaslav. That's unsurprising.
The guy that came into Discovery and was like, yeah, all this educational shit is great and all, but if you want to make some real money, let's put reality TV on. And so he like fucking like basically burned everything at Discovery to the ground. And then, hey, guess what he's doing at HBO? But yeah, True TV suffered the same exact fate. The only reason I know this is Adam Conover did an entire thing about what happened to Adam Ruins Everything, which was on True TV, and why it's not there anymore is because he was in that group of shows that got completely axed off of True when this guy came in.
Yeah. That tracks in and that's why Impractical Jokers is now on TBS probably, because he has dude, I don't even want to think about it. But yeah, Quasi is pretty good. The crazy wow, I can't believe they were able to get this person in it. And I think that like Slammin' Salmon, they got Colby Smulders in it at like the height of her popularity with How I Met Your Mother. They picked up Adrian Palicki as the like female lead in Quasi. Nice.
Nice.
And she's great. I've been a big fan of hers since G.I. Joe, the second one. Retaliation? Is that the second one?
Annihilation?
No, Rise of Cobra and Retaliation. So yeah, ever since she played Lady J, who's like one of my favorite Joes, I'm like, I'm gonna watch this actor. And then she was in John Wick, and I'm like, I made the right decision, right? And then she's in the Orville, fucking stuff up in the Orville.
I mean, she's phenomenal on Shield. Like that's the big thing.
Yeah, she is really good as Agents of Shield.
Because she was really good on Supernatural, but then she actually left the role on Supernatural and it got recast because she got the role in Shield, which was supposed to spin off into its own show. Remember when they
Most Wanted,
killed
yep.
off her character, and her and Hunter were supposed to spin off into their own show, and then that did never happen, which was a fucking shame. But then she ended up on the Orville, so it was okay.
Yeah,
but
it all worked out. And she was also Friday Night Lights, right? Like that's when my parents were like, "Oh my God, it's the girl from Friday Night Lights," and I'm like, "Yep, let's watch the Orville, guys." And now that's like the one thing where the family gets together when it's new to watch it, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, so it's really good. They all play dual roles in it, which is cool. It feels like an evolution from the dual role that Paul Soter played in Slammin' Salmon. It's not just like the Quasimodo story that you probably know from like Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's like got intrigue and assassination attempts and things. It's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun watching the movie. I'm just as surprised as you are, because I was like, I'm a big fan of them. Like their humor really works for me. And then I'm like, oh, they're doing a like direct to Hulu movie. Oh no, is this like the end of it? And it's like, no, they were able to do all their stuff, and they were able to have all their usual cameos. Brian Cox is the narrator, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I feel like a straight to Hulu movie right now is like not a I feel like that's a good sweet spot for their kind of comedy and filmmaking, because they are pretty independent for what they do in terms of their comedy. They're self-financed in a lot of their shit, and they are not. I can't think of a single movie of theirs that feels like a corporatized version of their shit, right? And they never sold out, is essentially what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel like any of their, like some of their movies get fucking weird. I mean, you talk about the dual role. Like we talk about one of our favorite bits in Beer Fest is Kevin Heffernan, right?
Yeah.
Like showing up as the brother, right?
Such a good
that joke.
The funny, I remember being in the theater when that happened and being like, "This is perfect. This is the
funniest fucking thing.
So fucking good." And they have one of those moments. There was a moment like that in Quasi that was like we had to pause the movie. We're watching the movie and they make this joke, and Dale and I lost it and had to pause the movie. So like thankfully it's a Hulu thing, because it was just so perfectly delivered, that same exact style of joke. And the fact that they're still able to like eat out on that sort of joke is awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that, like I said, I think this sounds like the perfect sweet spot for them to be able to pull off this kind of like really weird humor that they've got. Yeah, man. You ever want to watch one of the weirdest fucking comedy bits that like it was almost Andy Kaufman-esque was Chandra
Shekhar.
Yeah, Chandra Shekhar, right?
On Nailed It,
or the cake. Yeah, he's the guest. He's the guest judge on an episode of Nailed It, and it is so fucking bizarre because like I can't tell you if it's a bit or not of him like in the middle of that episode straight up just leaving set for a while, and everybody there being like, "Is he coming back?" And nobody knows what the fuck is happening.
To the fact that he has doubled down in interviews about it. Because like that's how it was brought to my attention. I was reading an interview and they're like, "So do you want to talk about what happened on Nailed It?" And he's like, "No, you can watch the episode. Like that's it. Like I have nothing to say that the episode doesn't say for me. So go watch the episode." So I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Then I watched the episode and I'm just like, "Oh my God, this is awesome."
It's a really weird bit. If it's a bit, I don't know what the joke is, but also if it's not a bit, I don't know what's wrong with him.
Yeah. I mean, you say that they've never sold out, and like that feels like maybe the closest they've ever gotten to it.
Then look what he did with it, right?
And then him being like, "Oh, I didn't realize that this is what this was going to be." So I'm gonna Jay Chandrasekhar the fuck out of it.
I mean, like the most I think he's really kind of the most mainline out of all of them, right? Because he's done a lot of directing in terms of like sitcoms and stuff. He did a ton of directing on Modern Family. He's got, I think, like half a dozen episodes of that, maybe even more, of Modern Family and stuff. And so he definitely is maybe the most mainstream out of all of them from what I have seen.
Yeah, and I mean, especially you look at something like the fact that he's the director on Dukes of Hazzard.
Yes,
like that's him. That's him being offered that. Kevin Heffernan is also the one. We've seen Kevin Heffernan, Farva from Super Troopers. If you're not familiar with the actual names of the troop, he has been in a lot of things that is not connected. I'm thinking about him as like Ron, the bus driver in Sky High, and then just other things where he'll just show up for an episode or two of something, and it's like, oh, it's nice seeing Kevin Heffernan. Like with the other guys, I can't think of anything where I've seen like Paul Soder not attached to Broken Lizard in some way. And Eric Stolkonsk, like, I honestly, I think that's all he does are these movies. And it was weird to me, having watched everything, like, from Puddle Cruiser up to Beer Fest, and being like, he's like a main character in this movie. That's weird. that he would not be, like, a sort of background character the way he has been in all of their other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a big fan of him, and I did want to like just highlight Quasi and say, if you're not sure if it's worth your time, if you like their stuff, there's a lot there for fans of Broken Lizard.
Yeah, well, and so Hulu's been really, I mean, that is one of the things that I will give Hulu. As much as I said that we don't really watch it in this house, so we weren't paying for it, I do miss some things with it because it was getting some really rad exclusives. Like, it was up there along with Netflix in terms of, you know, getting a hold of some Hulu generated content that I do really want to see. Like, so I do want to see Quasi. I still cannot believe that these motherfuckers pulled off a Quasimodo comedy. But anyway, all I can think of is the Hunchback musical from the Critic episode.
That's fair. That's understandable. The Hunchback episode from the Critic that feels like it inspired the Hunchback of Notre Dame from Disney, right?
And then there's they just had the History of the World series that they just put up that I really wanted to watch. I mean, even going back like a few months to the Princess, the John Wick style action movie they did that was set back in medieval times, right? Like there's that kind of shit. Like they've been doing some really goofy stuff. Horror movies, like, man, you get into the scary season, the spooky season, and Hulu's all over that shit.
Yeah, they're nailing it. They're like the stuff they said. I want to watch the one about Romeo's ex-girlfriend before Juliet, Rosaline. Like,
yeah.
Like it's Catherine Devers who's playing Rosaline. Like, I want to watch that stuff. Like, Hulu is almost producing too much content for me to keep up with, and they're dealing it out in a way that, like, if I tried, I probably could keep up with it. You know, as opposed to Netflix, where it does feel like I'm buried in it. Hulu is very smart about how they distribute things. And I think that comes from the fact that, like, it was built by people who understood network television.
Yeah, I do also think that they benefit from being second in the race. By not being the one at the lead, they're not the one getting hit with the blue shell all the time, right? Like they really do like to sit back and let Netflix kind of stumble so that they can get an idea of the better footing, you know?
Yeah, that's a
which
fair
is smart.
point.
It's a smart move, you know?
It's definitely like a strategy, and it's a strategy that works for them because they are still number two.
To be clear, right? To be clear, I feel like they would want to be number one no matter what. Like, striving to be number one is definitely still the goal. I just think that they're smart in that, recognizing that they may not necessarily always be number one in these conversations, that they're at least smart enough to sit back and watch what number one's doing.
I think that they're smart enough to say we are number one, right?
Yeah.
Netflix is not even something we're competing with. Netflix is the cautionary tale, and then we're the front of the line because we get to avoid the pitfalls that they find for us, right? Yeah. The pace car is in front of the winner of the race, but the pace car doesn't get a trophy. The winner of the race does. Netflix is the pace car of streaming entertainment.
I think that's actually a really smart way of looking at it, to be entirely honest. That's a perfect way of looking at it.
Yeah. Thank you, Seachin. And I think that's also where like HBO Max, when they were suddenly the guys in front of Netflix, like because they had all the growth and everything, it's
And Netflix was also taking a lot of really bad hits. Like they had everything to lose in that moment, and boy did they lose it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is like they weren't prepared to be there because
yeah, they really weren't.
They're like, oh my god, look at where we are, and it's like, yeah, but like you understand that Netflix is your cattle catcher, right? You're hitting a lot of stuff that's on the tracks, guys, that like Netflix just doesn't share with the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Quasi was good. It was enjoyable. I can't think of anything else that I really did this week, though. Did you watch or anything you want to share about? Or did you want to like try to keep this one in old Say report? I mean, like things are gonna pop off next week, right?
I mean, the only other big thing that happened this week that we're talking about was the Indie World Showcase from Nintendo.
Yeah.
Anything in that like speak to you?
Honestly, it was a lot of stuff I already knew about, to be completely honest with you.
I'm super excited about Brotato coming to Switch.
Yeah. Like that was the thing where I'm like, oh, Brotato on Switch, maybe now I'll check it out. There was something else. I think like Tesla Grad 2 being a stealth release was really cool, but
Yeah,
that was really
nuts.
strange because it debuted in the Indie World Showcase for Nintendo, but it's everywhere. Like, you can play Tesla Grad 2 and the remaster of the first game on any platform. So,
have you ever played Tesla Grad?
No, I haven't, but I'm interested. It looked really cool in that.
So one of the coolest things about the first one is that it's puzzle solving, but in motion. So like it's a lot of so it takes a lot of elements from something like, say, like a Meat Boy, but then adds a layer of you also have to be like doing math at the same time. It's great, like so you for anybody that doesn't know, there's like a Portal-esque element to like there's blue switches and orange switches, and then depending on what you hit allows you to either be pushed towards or pushed away from stuff, right? Like, so you get tossed around a bit in the ways in which you flip switches, and you're platforming using these abilities to float around and all this stuff. That's not the fairest way to talk about it. It's really hard to describe it without like just showing it to you, but with that in mind, the idea being that you had to constantly be in motion and also be trying to like making sure you're hitting switches in the right order and going in the right path and hitting it at just the right moment so that you fly in just the right way. So there's this fluidity to Tesla Grad that I really appreciated, and I tried going back to it a couple of months ago because I had kind of heard rumblings about a Tesla Grad 2. That's the thing, is like it was definitely stealth, like boom, it's like it is actually coming out, but like people have been kind of thinking that it was coming for a while. And so I just decided, I was like, well, I should definitely double check Tesla Grad then. And man, something in the interim, it was not clicking for me this time. And then when they announced that part of this whole package was that they're putting a remaster out of the first one, I was like, oh, so maybe I just need to play this remaster. Like, I don't know what it is that like it didn't quite work for me when I went back to it a few months ago. But hearing that they're doing a remaster of it kind of verified for me that it wasn't just me.
Yeah, I get that. I understand that like 100%. Like it doesn't confirm your biases, but it explains them. Does that make sense? I mean, I guess Blasphemous 2, I've been on the fence about going back to Blasphemous, maybe actually playing it on like a system instead of the weird Luna version that I played. Because someone pointed out to me that there's like a hidden arcade game in the game that's like an 8-bit version of Blasphemous that like I just did not find in the Luna version. And now that there's going to be a sequel, maybe I'll go back to it and get to play it without all the janky like bullshit that was the Luna version. I don't know. Like that was the other one that like kind of caught my ear, because I can't think of anything else that was even in it. That like Shovel Knight DLC that was like free DLC that you can do it. I guess I was upset that they like the best part of the Nintendo Indie World Showcase for me is that it made me check Infernax and find out that they did a co-op update on the 5th of April.
Yeah.
So there's more Infernax to play.
Yeah.
And they made it.
That sounds.
Yeah.
I'm excited that Shadows Over Loathing is coming to Switch. I've been replaying West of Loathing on Switch, and I fucking adore those games. So like that seems pretty cool.
I was disappointed it
Yeah.
wasn't called East of Loathing. That's where I came in.
it Shadows over Loathing makes a lot more sense, but sure.
I understand it, but I'm like, oh, East of Loathing, and then I guess
I
Shadows.
mean,
That's
the
fine.
bigger thing for me is there was stuff being included in that showcase that I was like, yeah, I understand how this counts, but this is not what I think. Like, the big one I'm thinking about is the Five Nights at Freddy's security breach announcement that they were like, that everybody's kind of like, oh yeah, security breach is like, yeah, that's a pretty big game for this announcement for this space, but sure.
But is it independent?
Also,
Is it not? It's not Activision, Blizzard, or anything like. It's not a AAA game, right?
I would definitely call it a AAA game just because it's not made by one of the big companies that it had millions upon millions of dollars put behind it versus something like say the Cult of the Lamb stuff that's coming out, which is another big popular game that has been around that people know about, but still pretty squarely independent in like a small team of people working on it, and they're kind of at the edge of their budget every time they do something with that game. Like there's not a lot of risk in the Five Nights at Freddy's security breach development as there is in any of these other games. And if this celebration of indie games is supposed to be this celebration of these people taking these kinds of risks, it feels like a little bit of a poke in the eye to have these guys there.
It's interesting, but
that's
I mean,
me.
It feels like the questions between indie film and independent film, right? Yes. Where like indie film definitely won that. Like,
yeah.
Napoleon Dynamite, and then like that took off, and then you have Garden State, and it's like, yeah, it's an independent film, but Zach Braff has the money to make like a movie that looks like a Hollywood movie. And I'm going back to 2004 with that, right? And it's only gotten like...
Also, that had Fox Searchlight behind it, so it wasn't Zach Braff putting just his own money. I know that he did do a lot of financing for that film himself and a lot of other work on that film, but part of that was that he also was able to then get somebody to come in and help, right? Yeah. And that's not always the case in those types of situations. And yeah, it does make you really question what qualifies as an indie film or an independent film, much in the same way. But the indie showcase for Nintendo, I think what it is that really gets me is it's not talking about the idea of independent game making in general, because that is such a wide like net to throw out there. It is, what is the point of this particular event, and what is that supposed to be doing? And like the reason that Nintendo started these Indie World broadcasts in the first place was they had such a bad relationship with independent developers on like the Wii U and on the Wii, really, but on the Wii U is really where it was like a big like, we have no games because none of the independent developers out there can develop for this system. So they've made a real push with the Switch to swing in the other direction on that. And part of that was this Indie World thing where they're like, we're really going to help celebrate these independent developers on these systems. And so there are certain games that we're talking about here that wouldn't exist on the Switch if it was not for that kind of work that they had done, you know. So like A Little to the Left, a puzzle game that I talked about on this very show and how much I fell in love with it a couple of months ago, is now going to be coming to the Switch, and that's awesome. That's fantastic. I don't think that would have happened on other Nintendo systems. Five Nights at Freddy's, though, I feel like eventually you would see this, especially this one, this largest release that was PlayStation exclusive when it came out. Like, you would see this on the Nintendo system eventually, right?
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo notoriously has not played nice with others, going back as far as the NES and the fact that you needed to be licensed by Nintendo in order to appear on that.
So like, the bigger thing with Freddy's to begin with is that also Security Breach is I think AAA game out of that series. I think anything before this one, and I would have been like, yeah, like how wild is it that they've got the entire like Freddy's library on there, because those were all made by one dude, like working his ass off and breaking his own game in a lot of ways and stuff like that. Like any other game in that series, yeah, but those have all been on Switch for a while. So, like, the idea that the 8th game in the series, Security Breach, is coming to Nintendo, and this is what we're going to spend a minute of our time here at this independent showcase, was like, all right, like, that's fine.
Again, I wasn't prepared for this at all, but I would make the argument that if it wasn't developed, just like a movie that's not released by one of the big 5 studios, formerly 6, right? If you're not Paramount, if you're not Universal, if you're not Disney, if you're not Sony, if you're not frick, I forgot the 4th one. I was feeling real good about that. Paramount, Universal, Disney, Sony.
But Sony did have their hand in security breach. Like literally, specifically, Sony had their hands.
Right,
in
right.
security
No, but I'm
breach.
talking about movies. I'm talking specifically about
Sure.
movies,
No, yeah,
right?
yeah.
What is the
Right.
fifth studio siege in? I'm not going to be able to move past it until like
MGM.
MGM. Thank you. That is the one that maybe it's MGM. I'm
MGM, which may or may not exist given on the day.
that's fair. I thought MGM was part of Disney though. It's whatever.
They got bought up by Amazon, didn't they?
Yeah. So I don't know. But like, so if you're not from one of those big studios, right? Then your film is technically an independent film, right?
Right.
A24, even though they're a big production company, because they're not one of the ones that are known and established in Hollywood, you're still an independent film, right? So I think because it's not one of these known AAA developers, right? It's not Ubisoft, it's not Activision, it's not Nintendo that's putting this game out. It's technically an indie game. Now,
Sure.
you thought like Sony's hands were definitely in Security Breach because of the fact that it was an exclusive for PlayStation. So where does it come from that? But I don't know. Like that's where
it would be like though. It would be like going and watching the Oscars for 2024, like the 2023 year.
Yep.
Them having a commercial for Everything Everywhere All at Once in it as that quaint little film that they held up last year that they want to remind you all about. And it's like, did we really need to do this? Did we need to spend this time talking about this Oscar-winning film from last year that everybody is aware of? And yes, technically it would be considered an independent film in this regard, but like you don't talk about it as this quaint little nothing film that needed your help in order to support it because nobody else would be aware of it if it was not here. Like that's not it's
I know.
Like talking about a game like Security Breach that has been out for months on a different system, paid for in part by Sony, and holding it up in the indie world up against something like a Brotato, which is made by like one dude, like somewhere. Like that's just.
I know. We're like all of the three people teams that we saw presenting their games, like up against something like that. But it's weird, right? Because it was an independent game, as you pointed out. It's this is not. I was not really ready to delve into this as to what makes an indie game anymore.
But it's just the whole commercial by Nintendo, because that's all this was.
It's
just
all
a
it is.
20-minute long commercial about all of their games coming out. Like you talk about not being interested in some stuff that's there, and I think that's part of the problem, is because like when one of the biggest things in their announcements is a game that was not quite independent and has been out for 5 months on other systems, when that is being held up as one of your tentpole indie games in your indie world thing, like it feels a little weird that's where a lot of the weight is being put, you know, this is after the fact stuff too, right? Like it's not like in that they were like, surprise, we're getting Security Breach. Like it's just that after the fact, it seems like it's one of the only things people can talk about is that, because like you said, there wasn't really anything else to kind of grab that attention. But like, did they shoot themselves in the foot by including something like a Five Nights at Freddy's in this? If they had not included that, would there have been other games that people would be focusing on? I don't know.
Yeah, it's certainly something I would need to look more into what makes an indie game an indie game. Like that's just something that needs to be quantified. Because I wasn't prepared for it, and I mean Security Breach is not even what I'm thinking of. I'm like Rift of the Necrodancer comes to mind before that other thing, before Security Breach. But then again, that's like I'm not into the Five Nights at Freddy games at all. So,
well, and I would say that the Necrodancer games are nowhere near the success level of the Freddy.
Oh yeah,
game.
no, that's fine. It's just like that's the thing that. Like it's a sequel to something that ended up having DLC with Nintendo that they worked together on. So I don't know, like that.
No, because what do you call it? If Hyrule is its own game.
Cadence of Hyrule. Like, that is its own game, isn't it?
Yeah. It's entirely its own game. It is not at all DLC for
I think of it, the weird thing for me is that you're right. It is its own game because I have the thing. I have a cart of it that is Cadence of Hyrule, and it is very different from Necrodancer. I don't know. It's a crazy thing that I had really never put any thought in or stock into, And like Five Nights at Freddy, like that happened, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I guess, right? Because that's not a game that I hear about or care about. I mean, it also seems weird to put it on there because like that guy's still a piece of garbage, right?
Well, again, he's not involved in this one.
Okay,
he's
all right,
somewhat
that's
involved, but it is made by but it is made by a studio of people, paid for in part by Sony, to be the 8th game in a series of games. Like it is so far removed from the idea of the
independent
little indie darling
yeah.
that like it's such a weird conversation to include it. And again, the bigger thing for me is that it has been out for months on other systems and making money. It's not even like it came out on other systems and kind of fell apart. So this Switch version might be a like revitalization of a lost art or something. No, like this is a successful game that has made millions of dollars on PlayStation. So like and on PC. I'm pretty sure it's on Xbox. I don't know, to be honest. But like I do know that it's on Steam and I do know that it's on PlayStation, and I know that both places there it has been played to death. There.
Yeah, but eventually, Vampire Survivors, if and when Vampire Survivors comes to Nintendo Switch, it's going to have an Indie World showcase. Regardless of the fact that it's made money on Steam and on Xbox. Because it's still an independent thing.
Like if they were doing like a Switch exclusive, like there's like things in the Switch version that did. Otherwise, I'm not interested in that one either. Like, if you really want to talk about it, like, if they put up Vampire Survivors 2 years after it was the huge, like, zeitgeist success that it was, and they act like this is, like, a cool thing that they're doing on the Switch, if there's not a hook of some kind, like in the Switch version, there's, like, these new characters we're introducing, or there's this new thing.
A Mario level,
Yeah, if there's not, like, some benefit to seeing it on the Switch, then no, I don't want to see that at the Indie World Showcase either.
Yeah, I mean, so like, I mean, that seems like you're bringing some of your personal thoughts into that, which is fine. We all judge things by our own lens.
But that's exactly what we're talking about, is that when you say, I watched the Indie World Showcase and nothing there interested me, right?
Yeah.
That's what that's exactly what we're talking about, is because when half of the shit there are games that have either already been out for a while on other systems, the other half are DLC packs for games that we are not interested in playing, or for games that, like, it's cool if this comes out, but then, like you said, we'll see if it actually even comes out at that time, right? Like, because it's just because something was announced, like it could just be like announced and then we don't see it for 5 more years, you know?
Yeah, that it's fair. It's all. One of the games was Animal Well. Animal Well is the one I want to talk about. I'm remembering that, and the fact that like Donkey has been all about I'm doing this game and this, and then for it to be like coming 2024. Like, that's where it was revealed that the game has essentially been delayed a year.
Yeah.
Because it was supposed to come out this year. Like, yes, they were all excited about it.
And then... Yeah. No, exactly. Is like, it's hard to get excited about these kinds of events anymore because of all of this bullshit. Like, all of this that's wrapped up in it. Like, I am excited about, like, a couple of different things on that list, but none of it is stuff that I feel like I needed to watch the Nintendo Indie World Showcase to discover.
True. That's true. It was all stuff that was already on my radar, or something like Teslagrad 2 being like the stealth release. It's like, but there was still talk about it. And again, it's a sequel to a game. Like, I had at least heard of Teslagrad. It wasn't new to me in that. I just had never played it. So
yeah, and Teslagrad is also a decade old, was more popular on other systems than it ever. I don't know if it was even on Nintendo when it came out, because I don't even know what system was out when it came out. Was it the Wii U? Probably.
10 years ago, yeah, Wii U would probably been their big one. I could see it being like DSiWare.
Was it on?
I don't know. I'm just talking about the fact that the reason why we're seeing the independent studio partnerships on the Nintendo Switch when we hadn't previously seen it on Nintendo home consoles is because where Nintendo was willing to go with the independent studios was on their handheld devices. So by the very nature of making their home console additionally a handheld, like that just sort of migrated and got into the water.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Because DSiWare was huge, and everybody's like, this is crazy that Nintendo's allowing this. So, like, it's not as crazy as you think that on Nintendo Switch they have all these games that, like, previously probably would have been Steam exclusives. And then,
Yeah.
you know, like you could trace that whole evolutionary line. That's then why Steam feels compelled to do something like the Steam Deck, because they're having their market shares attacked by the Nintendo Switch.
So,
Sorry.
Oh, I needed to just see, because I was like, I know that like Security Breach has already made over $30 million just on Steam. And that wasn't even its biggest release. Its bigger release was on PlayStation.
But just because the independent film makes money doesn't mean it's no longer independent.
Yeah, but we don't talk about that film 5 months after it came out as if we're like doing it a big favor by including it in this thing. Like, it's not a it doesn't, Security Breach doesn't need Nintendo. That's the big thing, is that, and it's part of the reason why it's been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, because it was supposed to be out on Switch like at Thanksgiving of last year. And the reason that it keeps getting pushed back is because, in addition to the fact that there's a lot of things broken with that game, they also aren't focusing on the Nintendo Switch release. So again, it feels super disingenuous to watch this whole thing and see a lot of people up there that are like really like pouring their heart and soul into a game, and then there's this thing that got like shit out that's being included there, and that's the only thing that I can find news about every time I search for Indie World Showcase. The Security Breach trailer is like what comes.
So I guess my question is, Security Breach doesn't need Nintendo. Does Nintendo need Security Breach?
I don't think it does, because again, that game is extremely broken and not looked favorably upon. As much as it has made this much money, like, I don't think that the Switch is aching so badly for an indie success that it needs to get its foot. Like, honestly, I don't even know if this game is going to come out on this. By the time they fix this game, it might be time for like the Switch .2 to be out.
Jeez. I mean, it'll probably still come out on Switch, right? I think that they're going to do a little bit better. I don't know. The world of gaming has changed so much because of the shortages that we saw with the PS5 and the Xbox Series, that like having backwards compatibility or releasing at least digital versions of games for the prior console generation is not as strange as it was before. And even like, think about freaking Breath of the Wild and the fact that it is a Wii U game in addition to being a Switch game.
Yeah.
Like there's some wiki stuff going on. That's not necessarily the coolest. I don't know. All right. So is there anything else that you want to talk about before we get people all jazzed up for what's coming?
Just also, the other thing to remember about Five Nights at Freddy's is that it also is owned by Lionsgate, because they're the ones making the movie and have been for a few years. So the two biggest publishers on Five Nights at Freddy's are Sony and Lionsgate. So
yeah, that's fair. Like, but again, they're not video game publishers, and that's all that they're talking. Well, Sony, Lionsgate isn't, is where I'm coming at it, right? Like, even though they do it, it's just how journalists refer to things. It's the same marketing bullshit that gives us something like the Seagen's Gambit, right? Mm-hmm. People want to root for the little guy. So if you can call a game an independent game, there are people who are so jaded by the big studios that like they'll suddenly give it a look.
Yeah.
It's just marketing. It's just marketing nonsense.
Also is a lot bigger of a game publisher than you think, because they actually have their hands in Dead by Daylight.
Yeah,
that's how all of the like movie stuff gets into that. And like, you're talking about a juggernaut of a game there. But they also produced the Blair Witch game that came out a couple of years ago, Evil Dead that came out last year.
But but all that I'm talking about specifically is the fact that Lionsgate is not considered one of the big names in publishing in the video game industry.
I mean, just because you're not thinking about them doesn't mean that they haven't been there, though, is what I'm saying. Like, it's such a if that is the only way that people are looking at the concept of independent, like, that is,
it's broken as hell. It's broken as hell, but it's what seems to be the nature of the beast in terms of this. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't have the experience.
Just
but...
like keep your audience ill-informed, and you can say whatever you want. Like that sucks. Like that's basically what you're saying is that Nintendo gets to just like throw whatever they want up there because they basically don't. As long as nobody's talking about it, nobody's gonna ask any questions. Like, and that's,
well, I'm not advocating for it. I'm just explaining where it comes from. It does that. I'm not excusing it.
Right, and I think it's bullshit, so we should put a stop to it. So yeah, there we go.
I agree. Well, on that, like, we can agree.
Sit here and excuse it. I'm not going to talk about that. Like, no, those are all bad reasons, so we're not doing that anymore.
Perfect. I mean, I don't know. The term independent, I mean, it's become so muddled with movies, right? Like an indie film, like true independent cinema, where like how Kevin Smith did Clerks, where like he sold his comic book collection and maxed out credit cards to make that movie. Like that's not happening anymore. Or if it is happening, those are not the movies we're seeing. Like
it's totally happening. Yeah, no, it's happening all the time. That's just it. It's like just people are just not talking about those movies. But like as somebody that goes to Sundance every year, believe me, those
are still happening. That's exciting. That's good.
I mean, look, we talked about this last year with one of my favorite movies from Sundance, not in 2023, but in 2022, that got picked up by Apple there. The one that's all about the guy at the bar mitzvahs. Oh, it's fucking killing me now. Where he's the party starter at bar mitzvahs and stuff. Oh. And like the first movie he had made was $30,000. And that was like all of the money that he had, and then he was able to scramble enough money together to make this one, and it got picked up with a $30 million contract from Apple. So like, I mean, that is the dream, and that happened just last year.
Right,
so,
but because you go to festivals, you get to see that. The common public, right, and that is what the commercial of like Indie World Showcase or anything. Like, they're aiming squarely for the common man, like the common public who are not going out and seeking those things out. The names that people, Jesus, and even that doesn't make any sense, right?
But that doesn't make any sense either, because Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most successful game franchises in the world. So if it's not there because it's
okay, all right, but the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Huge fucking property as of 1987 when the TV show releases. It doesn't change the fact that the 1990 movie was an independently funded and shot film that then got picked up by New Line for distribution. Right. Like that's an indie movie, even though Ninja Turtles are known.
Because when they said we want to make this movie, and a bunch of people said we're not giving you the money to do it, they had to figure out their way to do it on their own. Right. They were forced into a situation where they had to figure out how to do it on their own. That's not the case for some of these things anymore. Like if somebody is sitting there going, I want to make a Five Nights at Freddy's game, there isn't anybody out there that's like, I don't know if that's going to work anymore. Like, no, that's a pretty safe bet actually.
Right. But it doesn't change the fact that it was an independent thing. Like this one was not. I'm not saying that. It's so muddled. It is so muddled because of how it's reported on.
I'm saying that it's not as muddled as you think. We just all want to act like it's muddled. It's actually pretty clear cut. When there's millions of dollars handed to you by Sony to say make this thing,
I'm not talking about the Five Nights at Freddy's one. I'm talking about the term independent.
Yeah,
right?
I know, and I'm pointing out that I think that we have been talking about how muddled that phrase is for years, and I think we're actually wrong. I think it's actually pretty clear. I think we've just been using it wrong. I think people use the word independent when they shouldn't use independent, and we should just say, hey, stop that. Instead of pretending like everybody gets a pass because the word is muddled, I think we should start putting our foot down and say, no, nobody gets a pass anymore. Stop using the word independent when it's not independently made.
That's the dream, Sejin. I will agree with you there.
And I will not give up on that dream.
Yeah. I'm glad that we got this. Woo, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I had to be your antagonist in this Sejin. Because what you come...
Yeah, I get it. Everybody, let's play devil's advocate to like explore this. But like, no, there's no other side to this. Using the word
right, because like Fox Searchlight, or Searchlight Pictures as it's now called, coming in to fund your movie, even in terms of like distribution and stuff, like, is it still an independent movie?
I mean, part of that comes when did they come in?
Yeah.
Like, did they come in after you had lost your house and you were like living in the movie studio as you were making it? Or did they come in 6 months before you even started asking for money and go, hey, we hear you got an idea? Because they do both.
Yeah. And then, like, that guy who already had a movie made and then gets picked up by Apple. That's an independent film that is then picked up for Apple for distribution. But it's... You really frustrated me, CJ. Mostly, no.
I pretty much put my foot down.
No. You frustrated me because I wasn't ready to have this discussion. And that's it. Like, I feel ill-prepared for it because it's an important discussion. And I really wasn't prepared for it. And I'm giving you credit for that. The fact that you brought up what is an important discussion that should be being had. And I just felt ill-prepared to do it. So all I could do was play devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, I have no interest in the indie world stuff from Nintendo anymore because there's either stuff there that we're never going to see or it's stuff that isn't truly independent. Like there seems to be no in between right now with this stuff, and that sucks.
Yeah. And that's the gaming space where I don't even know, like, we talk about how muddled it is with movies.
Smooth, by the way, for that movie. Like,
what'd you say?
To get that name of the Cha Real Smooth is the name of the movie, by the way.
Gotcha.
That, like, yeah, like it's a movie that this guy like literally was on his last leg putting together. Was lucky enough to have enough success with his last film to at least get like somebody like Dakota Johnson in his next one. But like, it was a very, very small movie that then got picked up for millions of dollars. And like, those stories still exist, and people do get to see those. But like, then there's the other side of that where you have James Cameron making, you know, his billion-dollar films that then rake in $3 billion. So those are going to keep happening too. And like, it's not that I feel like these things don't need to be made or shouldn't be made. It's just that we need to stop telling these fairy tales about the ways that this stuff gets made, because the second we start turning everything into this romantic version is when shit gets hidden. When the struggles start to get
that's society that, like, right there, though. That's right. Society, and the fact that they want you to do that stuff, they have to romanticize it, right?
Yeah.
So that the kid who's going to think, I can make my own movie and I can become a big star by making a movie on my own. Like, it's less dangerous than with the other things where, like, if you don't find someone, then our society comes to a halt, because if we aren't falling in love with each other and making babies, then there will be no population in order to carry on society.
But it becomes dangerous when we tell people that that's the way that movies are always getting, like, this is how your favorite movie got made, so you should do it this way. And so somebody puts themselves in danger. Whether it's because they find themselves in a room with a person they shouldn't be in the room with, whether they find themselves working with people in inappropriate ways, or like they're putting their health at risk, they're not eating, they don't have food, or, you know, they don't have shelter, like, because they're dedicating so much of themselves to their art, because that's the way that their favorite movie was made. And it turns out that that's not at all how their favorite movie was made.
That's just the story,
and the same goes for games,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we see these like really romanticized versions of these developers out there, and then, you know, somebody wants to be a video game developer so bad that they end up working at Blizzard, and they end up getting like seriously mentally like hurt because of things like crunch time. But this is just the industry. This is just how it is, because that's what they've been told. And in order to put a stop to all of that, it starts with this kind of bullshit where we like laud these games as these like independent experiences that have made, you know, that this is how true games get made, and all of this shit. And it's like, yeah, but you're lying about the process of how any of these games get made in the first place. Like, and we need to stop doing that. Like, if we really want there to be any change in either industry, in film or games or music or anything that involves the arts, really anything that involves you being passionate about the final product, don't let that passion be used to abuse you in some fashion. And one of the things that we can do to stop that is to stop romanticizing the ways in which these games got made, because it's not always pretty, and it's not always straightforward, and it's not always obvious. And like, so no, don't include the $1 million project at your Indie World Showcase up against the people that are also sleeping in their car while they develop their game. Like, separate those two out, please.
We really stepped into something, CJ, and I'm happy you got to share this passion. I'm completely honest with you. I'm sorry that I wish that I was there with you on this. I was not prepared for this. I was prepared for Quasi. Thank you. Thank you for this. Because you shine a light on some things that I was just ignoring. And hopefully it also shines that same light on things for our listeners. All right. So now, just a little bit of housekeeping. We got a very special episode coming later this week. We're finally doing my favorite American Pie movie, which is American Wedding. I'm excited to rewatch that one and talk about it. Especially, I don't know if I've ever seen it. Well, I have seen it rated. I saw it in theaters. I don't remember the last time I've seen it rated.
Interesting.
So, like, this one specifically, the unrated version, adds like a 30-minute bachelor party sequence. So I'm excited to watch it without that. And then report back to you. But then the big news, this episode is Brendan Fraser History Month Eve, right? Like, all of that kicks off next episode.
Yep.
So just be ready for us to go nuts on Brendan Fraser in the coming episodes, guys.
This is gonna be a big May.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big May. It's gonna be a whale of a May. Because I'm an asshole. But until then, we got this new equipment that we're using to record this week. So if you have anything to say about that, you can find us online at The Say Report. Also, if you're looking to get a message to Sejan, that's the only way to find him on Twitter right now, since he deleted his regular account, which seems to have been the right thing to do. I will admit that, as the blue checkmark wars continue, and now it seems like Elon's just giving it to people who he wants to be his friend.
Or like as a weird own somehow. I don't know. The Stephen King one is really the one that threw me the most.
Yeah. Oh, Jason Alexander doing like a whole, I no longer have a blue check mark, I'm not going to pay for it, peace out. And then I've gotten my blue check mark back, and I don't know how. I'm not destroying the account so no one else can be me, but I am still deuces with Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, I don't freaking know what's going over there. But yeah, at The Say Report, if you're still on Twitter and you want to have any notes for the new equipment, I'd like to hear from you, and you can sneak a message into Siege in there too.
Yeah, and if you have any thoughts on Ori, and I want to know if Dev is going to play the sequel, which is currently on sale for $6 on Steam. But you can reach out to him at Devin D. Decker.
Well,
Tell him about that.
It's included in Game Pass, so maybe after Tears of the Kingdom, I'll do it. But it's not going to be until I've finished that game with the biggest air quotes around it. I still haven't finished Scarlet and Violet. that little indie, that Nintendo independent game. I mean, they're an independent game studio, Siege, and if you think about it.
By every definition we seem to have used so far today.
Anywho, until next time, thank you very much for listening, and Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Seaton Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.